there, I'm Linda Remmers from Hoop Sisters, and today we're going to do block A1. This is block A1 on our Goose Tracks quilt. Here's the entire quilt. And now we're going to go to the cutting table to take a look at the fabrics and threads. Here we are at the cutting table, and I'm going to show you what you need to do your block A1. First of all, according to our instructions, we need our backing fabric, 9x9 or 6x6 if you're doing a 5-inch. We need our background fabric, same size, 9x9 or 6x6. And you will need 2 fabrics from your Goose Track stash. The stash is the fabrics that you picked to do your Goose Track quilt. And I have chosen peach for my fabric 2 and yellow for my fabric 3. You will also need 5 contrasting threads for this block, and you will need a matching thread and bobbin for your 2 stash fabrics. Okay, so now we're ready to hoop our battleizer to stitch our block A1. So you'll take your piece of battleizer that you've cut large enough to fit your hoop. You'll lay it on top. And I like to use what I call hoop huggers, and all this is a rubber shelf liner that you can get at the grocery store. And I cut it into 1-inch strips roughly, and I lay it over the edge of the hoop, and then I hoop my battleizer, and what it does is it prevents it from slipping and stretching while you're stitching, and it just kind of grips it really nice. So once I get that hooped, I'm going to put my hoop on the machine. And of course I've selected my design, and I will stitch the outline right onto my battleizer. Alright, for our next step of block A1, which is step 2, we're going to change our thread to our water-soluble thread, and we really recommend the Vanish Light by Superior Thread. It is a wash-away thread, so that's going to go in the needle only. And so I've already done that on my machine. And then also in step 2, I need to take my background fabric and I need to fold it into a square. And I'm going to cut a small hole in the very center of the square. So I'm just going to grab my hoop scissors, shameless self-promotion, and I'm going to cut a small hole in the center of the square. And then I will place the square directly over my stitch design, which you can see. So it'll go directly over. My fabric is right side up. I'll smooth it out, and I've already got my wash away thread in the machine, and I'm just going to go ahead and stitch the tack down stitch. So continuing with step 2, it's now time to trim fabric 1 on block A1. So the small hole that we made in the center, I'm going to use that to go ahead and start my trimming. And I'm going to just trim it a scant 1/4 inch inside the stitching line. You can see, barely see my stitching line right there, about a scant 1/4 inch. And I'm just going to come all the way around the inside of this whole shape. Okay, so I finished trimming my step 2, and as you can see, the fabric comes out and it reveals the battleizer with the stitching on it. And now it's time for step 3 to go ahead and change to my thread 2 match. So that's what I'll do next. So this is our thread 2M, which is 2 match. It matches my fabric 2, and it's stitching a decorative stitch on top of my background fabric. Okay, so now we're ready to do step 4, and again you need to change to your water-soluble thread in the needle only. You can still leave your bobbin thread in, and you'll take your fabric 2, which in my case is from my stash and it's my peach fabric, and again fold it in quarters just like we did on the first piece, and cut a small hole in the center, and then you'll lay the fabric right side up over the top of your stitching. And here I've just finished up my, my peach stitching. So I'll lay my fabric right side up and then tack down my fabric. And again, we're using water-soluble thread, so your stitching will wash out later. So continuing with step 4, it is now time to trim your fabric 2. So we need to trim on step 4, we need to trim on the outside, and we need to trim as if for applique very, very close. So I'm using my hoop scissors because I can get really nice and tight, pulling my fabric just a little bit, and the point of the scissors will get me right down into the point of the design. And I'm trimming really, really close, as if I'm doing applique, because you are sort of doing applique. So I'll continue around the entire block in that manner. So we're about finished with trimming the outside of the block, nice and close. And now it's time to trim the inside. And the inside, again, we made the small hole so we could get our scissors in there. And we're going to trim a scant 1/4 inch from this stitching line right here. So that's how you'll do the entire block on the inside. So here we have step 4 with our entire fabric 2 totally trimmed. We've got the outside nice and close, and we have the inside about a scant 1/4 inch away. Our next step for step 5 is to change to thread 2M in needle only, which would be matching my fabric 2. So I will do that now. So continuing on with step 5, I have my thread 2M in the needle only, and it's going to stitch a stem stitch around the outside of this block. And the stem stitch is a rather open type of satin stitch. You can see it's open, and it's really beautiful stitch. And do not be concerned if you think it's too open, because we will go back later and stitch over it again when we do the quilting process. So we just finished up stitching our step 5, and that was our thread 2M in the needle only. And I wanted to point out how nicely the thread matches the fabric. It's vital that in this step you do choose a matching thread. You'll get your best results. The next step for step 6 is to change in your needle only your wash away thread. So I've already done that, and we're going to take our goose stash fabric number 3, and we're going to place it right side up, our last square, right side up over the center of the hoop, and it's going to stitch a tack down stitch. So continuing on with step 6, we've just stitched down with our water-soluble thread our fabric number 3 from our stash, and you can see the outline right here. So I'm going to trim this real close as if it's an applique. So I like to grab the fabric and give it just a gentle pull while I'm trimming around really, really close. And I'm going to do this all around the block, and you can see it will expose what's underneath. So now we're ready for step 7, and I have placed my thread 3M, which matches my fabric 3, in the needle. Again, it's important that this match the same way that 2 match the fabric and the thread match. And it's going to stitch the stem stitch on this raw edge. We are now ready to do step 8, and I need to put thread C3CA in the needle only, and I've chosen for that color my mint green. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and it will stitch a decorative stitch in the corner. So as you can see, we've just stitched our step 8, our mint green, which is our thread 3CA. Now I need to put for step 9 my thread 3CB in the needle only, and I've chosen lilac. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So as you can see, we've just stitched our step 9, which was our thread 3CB, and now I'm going to place in the needle For step 10, my thread 3cc, another contrasting thread, and in this case I've chosen hot pink, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So here's our completed step 10 with our hot pink thread in there, which was my thread 3cc in step 10. Next, I will place thread 3cd for step 11 in my needle only, and it will continue on with the decorative stitches. So this is the result of step 11 with our turquoise thread in the needle only. The next step would be step 12, and I've chosen my aqua thread, and that would be thread 3CE. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the needle now and stitch that design. Now we're ready to do step 13, which is to place the back of the quilt block onto the back of the hoop. As you can see, we have the front of our hoop finished, or the front of our block finished. It's all totally stitched. I'm going to turn it over, and we're looking at right now the battleizer, and I've taken my block back fabric and I've sprayed it a little bit with any brand of temporary spray adhesive. And I'm going to go ahead and stick my block back fabric onto the back of my block. That's very hard to say. Then I will go ahead and place it on the machine, and in the needle I will put my vanish, my wash away thread again, because now the machine is going to go ahead and baste the back of my block on. Okay, we're ready to do step 14, and in step 14 you need to put your thread 2M in the needle and the bobbin. So I have my peach thread and my peach bobbin, and I'll go ahead and put that in the machine. Also, you will want to, on your machine, if you have the feature where you can turn off your cut jump stitches, you're going to want to do that at this point. Anytime you get to the backing of your quilt block, you also want to cut off your jump or stop your jump stitches, so you will have a neater back in the end. So as you can see, here's the front of our block after we've done our first quilting stitch, and here's what the back looks like, and this is why we put the matching bobbin thread in. And also, because I turned off my cut jump stitch, it's very nice and clean. My next step would be step 15, and we need to put in thread 3M, that would be my yellow, in the needle and the bobbin. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and it's going to do a stem stitch around this yellow area. Continuing on with step 15, we're going to draw our bobbin thread up just as we did on step 14. So again, we'll have a nice tidy back, and it will do the satin stitch around the yellow area. So here's the back of our block after we've stitched step 15, and now we're ready to do step 16. And in step 16 we need thread 3CB in the needle and the bobbin. So I have wound the bobbin in my lilac thread because that's what I've chosen. So I'm going to go ahead and put the thread in and stitch that out now. As in the last two colors, anytime we start to stitch after the back is on, we need to draw up our bobbin thread. So again, we have a tidy back, so that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to start my stitches. So here's the back of my block after stitching step 16, and you can see the beautiful quilting, and it's nice and tidy because I've turned off my jump stitches. The last step is step 17, and we need to put thread 3CD in the needle and the bobbin. So this is what I've chosen to do, is the hot pink. It's a repeat of a color, but that's perfectly okay to do that. So I'll go ahead and put that in the machine and stitch that now. Just like in the last three steps when we're doing the quilting, we need to draw our bobbin thread up to the top. So I'll do that by doing needle up down and pulling my bobbin thread up to the top, and then begin my stem stitching. And this is the last step in the quilting. So here's our completed block A1 in the front, and I'll turn it over and show you the back, and you can see it's beautiful with all the different bobbin threads that we've chosen, and nice and tidy because we did turn off our cut jump stitch. And this water soluble thread will rinse away later after your quilt is sewn together, so you won't have any stitching from the front. This is the placement of block A1, and you can see it is a corner block on the Goose Tracks quilt. We actually have the border, the optional border on this quilt. So I wanted to explain that if you were not doing the border, we are going to trim 1/4 inch from the outside stitching basting line through all layers on these two sides because of the corner block. And then on the two insides, we're going to use the trimmer by George. So we'll show you how to do that now. So as I was saying, this is block A1 again, and this would be my outside corner if I was not going to put on the optional Goose Tracks border. So in that case, I will trim it 1/4 inch away from the outside stitching line. So I've placed my 1/4 inch mark on my outside baseline. That would be the line that holds the block back to the block front. So there's my 1/4 inch. I'll do the same on this side. Now I have my outside corner ready to go. We do that through all layers so that your binding has something to hold on to. Now the inside corner has to be trimmed by our trimmer by George. And the trimmer by George has a small lip on it. It's very, very thin aluminum. And what we do with that is we pull back our block front and we snug up the trimmer by George up to the basting line. Lay it down flat. Place your hand on it lightly, and I like to give my battleizer just a little bit of a tug. You're actually going to be trimming off your battleizer and your backing. There it is, it's gone. Notice the trimmer actually protected the block front fabric. And you'll notice too that on the back it's nice and close. So I'm going to do the same thing on this side. This is also an inside edge. Snug it up, lay it down flat, give my battleizer just a little tug, trim it off, and now I have two inside edges with the back and the battleizer totally trimmed. The outside, or the front of the block, is what's left to trim now, and that is also done 1/4 inch from your outside basting line. So I'll use my quilter's ruler to do that. Do it on the second side. So on the front it all looks entirely the same, but on the back you've got your outside corner and then you've got your inside corner. The front is only exposed on the inside corner and all the layers on the outside corner. If you are going to do your Goose Tracks optional border, then you would do all 4 edges with the trimmer by George.